So yeah, welcome out Ron G, aka your console, the Net Worth Nation. I wanted to talk today in particular about the infamous three elephants in the room. And one of the things that I always try to do is keep things as simple as possible. I know a lot of you guys, if not already, the thought of retirement has crossed your mind, and most likely it's happened since the 2020 pandemic. I think a lot of us that may not even be at retirement age, at least full retirement age. I know a lot of my peers that are not there yet, but we are thinking along those lines as we should be because what we've realized is what COVID has done is it's kind of opened our eyes to a few things. And I think we may be realizing that there's some things that we can do differently. So, for the sake of today's exercise, I want you, Mr. and Mrs. Client out there, to kind of really put yourselves in a position where you're open minded about this particular presentation because I think it'll help us really put things in perspective. So, what are these three elephants that we have to deal with when we're looking at the retirement uh, cycle, the retirement sector, and one to ensure that we actually have a secure and solid retirement? Let's talk about the first elephant that most of us probably know of, only not because we're able to look forward at this particular elephant, but if we're really struggling with how to make sense of this particular elephant in the room, I think it's better for us to look behind, right? Because I think it's easier for us to look back sometimes than it is for us to look ahead. So when you look back at what inflation make means, let's talk about this dollar. And not because I love Prince as an artist, but I do want to start out with 1999 because it was one of those years that everyone was very concerned about. And so, for the sake of today's exercise, if we look at the 1999 chart of what a US dollar got for us at that timeline, we will see that a dollar was a dollar. You always hear the old ones say, a dollar ain't what it used to be. But a chart like this really does give them some credits, some real good insight of this and some credibility. A dollar of then is now worth $1.83 today. We probably don't pay too much attention to it, although 83 cents is important. But notice how bad 83 cents separates itself once you drop down to the buying power of $100. The buying power of $100 in 1999 absolutely doubles almost in its power in today's market. It's at $183.49. So as you can see, now things start to kind of look a little bit uncomfortable. And then when you drop down to $1,000, it's evident here that $1,000 in 1999 purchased close to $2,000. Now, you probably are saying, why is this elephant one of the elephants that has to be addressed? Is because when we are thinking of retirement, like I said when I first started this, it's kind of hard for us to look ahead, but it's more easy to look back. So, and I'm not saying that this is the formula for everything, but from what we've seen, history has shown that the cost of goods and services have gone up while the value of the US dollar has gone down. So, what exactly am I getting at with this elephant? Well, it has to be dealt with when you're thinking about your retirement blueprint. I mean, if you're looking at certain things and you're looking at certain costs and you add on 20 years of retirement time as a minimum, considering, basic health, and we know people are living longer in today's societies, even with COVID and even with all the things that are going on, is you can find more people today walking around in their 80s than maybe you saw 30 years ago. So, where am I going with this? Well, I wanted to kind of look at things from the baseline of relevancy. And I'm not talking about things like we all know in today we have our toys and bells and whistles, but I wanted to break this down on the most fundamental level. The three fundamental things that we know we absolutely everybody is going to have their hands on is a home, a vehicle, and of course, food. And so I use these basic principles just to see what these guys were looking like back in 1999. So an average house going nationally at about 161. Obviously, there's some areas of the country at that time that were a little less than that, some a lot less, but we have to go middle of the road here. National average, of course, on a vehicle was $20, and of course, for a family of four, roughly just under $900 a month to feed a family of four back in 1999. Now, why is that important? Because again, we said we can look back sometimes easier than we can look forward. And now we look at the price of a home has almost, well, excuse me, it's more than doubled. It's almost tripled what it was 20 years ago or in 99, up to 416. Vehicle 2048, that's pretty much doubled. No ands, ifs about it. And food just under, about what, $1,500 at 8 and 8, 16, just under doubling, just about doubling. Might as well say it doubled when you look at the fact that probably more people today are eating out, more likely to eat out than they did back in 1999. We've already talked about this on other videos that we have literally almost eaten our savings away, as we say, digging our graves with a spoon and a fork. And so the reality of it is that we now look like we're digging our financial graves with a spoon and a fork. So the reality is that these numbers, as unfortunate and whatever we might be feeling right now, looking at them, unfortunately, these numbers are pretty much dead on accurate. And so, what am I saying? We're not even talking about all the other things that are in a house that wasn't in a house maybe 25 years in 1999. In 1999, everybody didn't have a desktop computer. You know what I mean? Everybody didn't have two, three, four televisions on each wall. Everybody, might only been one family car. I got three, four cars sitting out there. I got everybody's driving now. So these are a lot of things that even make these numbers a little bit more questionable. Elephant number two: health scare. And I don't mean that because Halloween is around the corner, but I do mean health care, health scare, health care. Healthcare accounted for a large portion, okay, of total household spending. And this one kind of got me a little nervous for Medicare households. Why am I looking at Medicare households versus non Medicare households? Because Medicare households are either for two types of people. A person on Medicare could be somebody that's young with some form of disability, which means they're not making the kind of money they were making before, or there's some form of senior citizen who's out of more or less along the line of retirement age, which means their income has obviously gone down. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get ahead. But the point I wanted to make for today is understanding the importance of healthcare and the impact that it has on your retirement savings. This elephant cannot be overlooked, just like the inflation one. This is one of the elephants that pretty much it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When meaning when the fall happens, when the major sickness comes along, when the operation happens, right? These are things that are happening in real time each and every day of our lives. Now, I'm not going to bore you to death with these statistics, but the reality of it is that most people are going to encounter some form of major medical setback in their lifetime. And if it's not once, in some cases, it can be twice, three times, or more. So without planning ahead and not being prepared for the health care or health scare crisis, which potentially can knock on your door at any time, we're setting ourselves up for absolute failure. Now, again, I don't like to bore you to death with statistics, but I will throw a few of them out there. Falls are the most common cause of traumatic injuries. And this is old, but 2015 total medical costs for falls tallied up over $50 billion nationwide. Medicare and Medicaid shouldered roughly around 75% of these costs. Notice that problems that people have had, adults when paying medical bills. Why? Because guess what? That digs into your saving, that digs into the stash cash, right? Hospital bills, emergency room bills. These are things that are really not planned for, although they should be. When you look at the statistics of almost certainty, it should be. But again, that's another story for another day. One that we definitely should be looking at more, even if we don't want to look at the falls and hospitalization, is the car accidents. In 2020, 35,766 fatal car accidents. Again, that's nationwide, but that's still high. That's still high. And then when you talk about 1.5 million crashes that resulted in one form of injury or another nationwide, that's a lot. That's a lot. So, like I said again, not to scare anyone into anything or into panic, but you cannot say you can't account for something that pretty much is more likely to happen than not, right? And then, of course, the disability chart. So, again, so just to recap, the elephant in the room definitely, 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 almost certainly is going to be healthcare. The third elephant, the one that just gets under our skin. This one really gets under our skin. And this is one that's really not planned for either because there is a lot of lack of understanding when it focuses around what our uncle wants from us. Our uncle just loves you because what he tells you, 401k people, or annuity people, you're either going to pay now or you're going to pay later. I mean, let's be honest. You hear a lot of people talk about deferred, 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 deferred. Sure, but you're going to pay. I listen to a lot of these guys on YouTube. I'm listening to a lot of these advisors, these financial advisors and stuff. But you got to tell people the ultimate truth and the ultimate facts. And you don't tell them to scare them. You tell them so that they can prevent and reduce loss, reduce the calamity of loss. That's what these informative videos are for. So now that you have the right information, you can apply the right knowledge, right? So pay now, pay later. But guess what? Pay you will, and pay indeed you shall, if you are not prepared in how to navigate those waters. So we said something about deferred, deferred, deferred. But let me ask a quick question when you come to that. Would you rather pay on the harvest or would you rather pay taxes on the seeds? Let me ask you again. Would you rather pay taxes on the harvest or would you rather pay taxes on the seeds? Now, if you're looking at this little peak chart over here, as you can see, the more money you make, meaning the more harvest you make, the more taxes they what? They take. So in this case, the seed is 10,000. Not too bad, 10%. You look at the harvest down here at 500,000, and what are they taking out? 35%. So you get where I'm going with this. If you must set your tool bag up, keep in mind the tax strategies that we teach here at Net Worth Nation, not because we're experts, but because we have sound understanding of how to stay out of the way of the hammer. So yeah, so we have a few things that really rolls right into timing with that. So we all are familiar with some of the nest eggs that we've been taught about over the last 10, 15, 20 years of our lifetimes, anywhere from Roth IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457s, right? We've been talked about this, right? So we know that the Roth is a tax sheltering savings vehicle. It does have income limits, but you can put anywhere between 6 grand a year in there and maybe even up to 7,500. If you're over the age of 50, you may get about 3% or so. We know that annuities are very good forms of security as far as securing some form of a lifetime income. And we know that we can set that table up pretty much based on what our financial needs are. That's why no two products will always be alike, but it really depends on you as the client. We know that the 401k, remember we said before, is a deferred tax vehicle where a company may match or may not match your products, and it is based on market performance. 403Bs, 457s, same thing. It's a deferred tax vehicle, but it's for specific employees like law enforcement officials, government, police officers, teachers, people like that, certain state officials that fall under that category. And then you have your traditional CD, CDs, bonds, rate of returns. These are banking products that are governed by the bank. Oh, and I did not mention that your 401ks, deferred tax, most of these products are influenced, if not completely, I don't want to say controlled, but to a certain extent, they are controlled by the market, like a 401k. If you're losing money in the stock market, chances are you'll be losing money in your 401k. Um, the Roth is a lot more safer. The annuities, if structured properly, obviously can be safer because they really are based on market performance. You can set them up so that they don't lose everything that you put in them. But for the most part, these tools are tax deferred tools. And then, of course, the one on the right down at the bottom, one of my favorites, the IUL, obviously, for the obvious reasons, as you saw in the previous slides, injury, sickness, disabilities, all of these types of things. It's an insurance product, a sickness benefit, a disability product. It can be used as a retirement product. Guess what? Exactly, avoiding taxes altogether if you properly structure it. And then, of course, it can be liquidity, a lot more liquid than these 401ks and some of these annuities because you can't touch their money under only certain conditions. So, where am I going with this? Well, let's think about this. And we're talking about 403Bs and the teachers, but let's look at something that may make some sense. The cliff. So we're talking about the retirement gap, and that's really the whole nature of why we want to make identification of the three elephants in the room. Because when you retire, most of us know that you're going to go to the Social Security calculator. It's going to calculate your income. It's going to have a formula that's going to do division. Ooh, I hate division. Ooh, when it comes to my money. But anyway, it's going to divide and boil your number. Yep, down, not up, but down to a number that is what you're going to get for the rest of your life from Social Security. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. An average person started out making 41 grand, school system maybe 20 some odd years ago. They put in 30 years, and now they're roughly around 60 grand when they're getting ready to come out the door and retire. So, why am I grimacing when I was telling you how the division works? Because when Social Security finishes breaking down this $60,000, it's probably going to look closer to, yeah, about 25 stacks. Here's the downside to that. If you remember on the previous slides, I showed you the basics. I showed you the cost of a house, I showed you the cost of a vehicle, and I showed you the cost of food. Here's the bummer in all of that. Those costs from 1999 to current actually doubled, some tripled, and some almost close to quadrupling. That's disturbing. Why? Well, because what we know from that slide is that if a person has been navigating through those waters for the last 25 to 30 years and prices have been doubling up, how is someone going to survive off of 25,000 when $25,000 technically is less than the money annually they were making when they even started their journey in the work field? So, yeah, it's no way in the world that Social Security is going to cut it. It's just not happening. It's just not happening. And the reality of it is, I don't know that enough of us have really wrapped our head around that. I mean, you hear people say, "Oh yeah, I probably get like 1,500 or 2,000 or this or that." Yeah, that's a month. That's a month, right? Some people are making 15, 16, 1,700 every 2 weeks, which means they're making close to 35,000 or, excuse me, 3,500 or 4,000, not, 1,500 for the whole month. And so this is why I think it's very, very important for us to wrap our heads around these numbers, because the numbers, they don't lie. I don't think justice has been done with numbers like this, because most people will not even think about these numbers until they're down to their last, what, maybe 5 years in their business or 5 years in the game. And then they're looking at stuff like, oh man, I had one of those and I got rid of that. Or I had one of those products and I left that job and I got rid of that. And so now they have all this regret because they know they've played around with a lot of these tools. I don't know if anyone really implanted on them the importance of the tools, but we do know that a lot of people had them. And unfortunately, what we realize is that this gap is so hard to fill that if we don't have the full three, the IRAs, the 401ks, the IULs, the annuities, and these little bells and whistles, these products that are not optional, they really shouldn't even be optional. If I told you walking in the door, hey man, you're going to be making 41 grand and then you're going to get money and you're going to get raises over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And by the time you retire, you're going to walk out the door at the highest pay for your field and you'll be making about 60,000. Oh yeah, but by the way, once you retire for good now and go home, to your family, you're only going to be making 25,000 a year. And you're gonna have kids. They probably still be paying on your house because you know and I know that most people with a 30-year mortgage, they've either refinanced it once, sometimes twice, or they've moved sometimes once, sometimes twice. People go through marriage, through divorce, all types of things that affect this bottom line. So you know and I know that the likelihood of someone not moving or not touching, their home or their equity in their house is almost slim to none. So how in the world is someone going to function off of $25,000 a year when they're accustomed to so much more? It's impossible. It's impossible. And then again, why do we keep talking about the elephants? Because the inflation elephant, the health scare elephant, and then of course you're still paying taxes. Taxes doesn't go away. You still pay. So now you begin to see where you were able to live one way, and then when you're in your golden years, ain't nothing gold about the golden years if you got to live off of 25,000. So I want to kind of bring it right there and stop there, because what we want to do is help close these gaps. And the only way we can do that is by making you well aware of what's out there for you and why you need to use it. This obviously is a promo for retirement products and services. So I'm not cutting no corners here. I am telling you that this is an absolute. So, for those of you who have stayed with me so far, I appreciate you. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I have whatever you need as far as content is concerned when it comes to your retirement savings and just investments, just to have there for a rainy day. TheNetworthNation.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm your guy, aka Ron G, your console. Until next time, peace. We out.